Good afternoon again. For those new in the audience, my name is Erik Barentsen. I'm policy or senior policy officer, but doesn't matter, at the Dutch Data Center Association, responsible for energy and sustainability. We are a national trade organization, so we help our members and our partners to meet each other, like events in these, but are also the voice of the data center industry in the Netherlands to basically to everybody who wants to listen to us. So today's session will be about, how did we call it again? Oh yeah, the future of sustainable data centers beyond PUE. As you know, PUE is a commonly used factor to measure the effectiveness or the energy effectiveness of data centers, but it's much a calculated number. It does have value, but today we want to talk about what else can we do as an industry to go beyond this PUE discussion. And I have two guests. I have Erik Lisica from Iron Mountain and Robert Bunger, do I pronounce that correct, from Schneider Electric. So I first would like to introduce you, and perhaps it's best to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background of your company and your position.
All right.
Rolf is first.
Yep. Hi, I'm Rob Bunger from Schneider Electric. I'm super excited to be here. My first overseas trip since January of 2020, which I think was like 5 years ago. So I'm in the, I've been with Schneider Electric doing data center stuff, both small and large, for like 24 years. And specifically now I lead some projects which are looking at future technologies and future trends as it's associated with the data center. And I hope most of you are familiar with Schneider Electric. And if you were to go to our website, right, it says our purpose is to enable all to make the most of their energy and resources and bridging progress and sustainability for all, and we call that Life is On. And you're probably thinking, and I know you have a question, is like, why did an American come over to Europe to talk about sustainability? So the reason is over the past year, I was leading a work group. As you know, Schneider is big into sustainability. We have a goal to be carbon neutral in our operations by 2025. Carbon neutral overall by 2040, which are huge goals. But we said, hey, what do we have to do in the data center to do that? And so we put a task force together and actually first focused on the metrics. And so the production of that was a paper that we came out, it was internal research for us, and then we published it in the fall, looking at, hey, what do we think the most important sustainability metrics are for data centers? And I do not have an education in sustainability, so I was really getting into this over this past year and a half. And when you first look at it, my head was spinning with regards to all the organizations that you can report up to, all the different metrics that you could do, and what are the ones that are most relevant to the data center. And so, that's hopefully something that's a free resource for all you guys. But anyway, that's what I've been doing the past year.
Erik.
Good afternoon. My name is Erik Lisica. I'm the operations director for Iron Mountain Data Centers here in Europe. My travel was less impactful than yours. I actually live close by. Iron Mountain is a global operator of data center and co-location facilities. We deliver a spread of services from build-to-suit for the larger hyperscalers up until purely managed co-location facilities. For me, the reason to join this panel today is that I am the sponsor for some of the main sustainability projects within Iron Mountain for Europe. Iron Mountain has some huge sustainability goals, amongst which being climate neutral by 2030. And we have a little bit of an innovative view on sustainability in data centers and how we achieve sustainability in the full delivery chain of ICT, which we're going to be talking a little bit about today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would like to ask you to leave them to the end. We have about 10 minutes Q&A at the end. So my first question to Schneider is, and it's interesting because in the previous session there was a discussion in that, like, if you can't measure it, you can't control it, right? You don't know what you're doing, you don't know what the sustainability effort or effect is, or what your scope 3 emissions are, or it looks like we need a lot more metrics to actually calculate our sustainability. And I believe, you already said it in your introduction, that you have made a white paper. Perhaps you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, and so the first thing I want to mention is, so PUE, I think is, there's been a lot of shade thrown on PUE recently. There's ways you can cheat on it and stuff. But if you look, has there really been any single metric that has made such a difference in data center efficiency over the past 10 years, right? And it really has been incredibly effective for basically our industry to self-regulate ourselves from an efficiency perspective. But it's reaching our limits. Everybody's kind of doing a great job getting very low PUEs. And so we took, what are the overall sustainability things? And of course there's carbon. So we looked at 5 major categories of sustainability that data centers can look at. So first is energy. The next one would be carbon, and that's scope 1, 2, and 3. The next one is water, water usage. And the other one is more circular economy stuff, so waste. How much is going to landfill, how much is being recycled. And the last one is kind of an emerging topic, which is land and biodiversity. So what's our actual physical impact of the land that data center is on? Luckily, that's pretty small compared to a lot of other industries, but there's a whole supply chain, right, that supports data centers, and you've got to look at that too. So those are the major categories, and we have metrics that fill in all of those.
And those metrics are available, are already any kind of tool that the data center can use?
Yeah. So nothing new invented. They would be metrics that you would already know of. So there's all the old green grid ones that moved over to ISO IEC. So right, PUE's in there, WUE, CUE, and WUE, and then also just your kind of standard greenhouse gases. So megatons, and there's 2 types of metrics that we have in there, both absolute values, because most data centers might have to report up just a total, scope 2 carbon, right, to corporate, and they bundle that up into the corporate reporting. But then there's also ratios, which are the ones I kind of mentioned, which are great. So now you can start comparing different sized data centers to each other, both from a PUE, carbon, water usage perspective.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said PUE already made a significant impact because it gave the data center industry, a great reason, and actually, from a legislation point of view, certainly in the Netherlands, you need to be beyond or below 1.25. So and that has created a lot of traction, and actually we reached those goals as well in the Netherlands, which is actually great. In your opinion, what would be the next utilization effectiveness metric that could help us in the next step? Beyond PUE, so could it be CUE or something like carbon effectiveness, where you actually look at the whole chain, including recycling waste heat and those kinds of things?
So I'll start on this one.
You can start, and then Erik can comment. That's good.
For sure, carbon. I think that's a given at this point. And again, the last 2 years, water has become a big public, awareness to the water use of data centers, as an industrial processor, user of water. So I think that's going to be another one. Again, the emerging ones are kind of be land and biodiversity. That's going to be a little bit further out. And I think some of the easy ones still to do is, the ratios of waste to landfill versus recycling. A point I wanted to make from the last session, which was interesting, is, I was thinking about this with scope 3 carbon, embedded carbon, and right now, if I were to ask most people in the audience, how much does a data center cost to build? Most people in their mind kind of know, I know if I'm really good, it costs this, how many dollars or euros per watt versus the high end, right? Everybody has a feel. And if I were to ask you right now, how much carbon does it cost to build a data center? Probably, I don't have it at my tip of my tongue today, but I think next year or the year after, we'll probably be all on the same page and say, data centers X have about this much embedded carbon in them. So, I think we're at the beginning of that kind of journey.
Okay, great. So over to Erik. Same question to you.
Yeah, I think one of the questions we all need to ask ourselves is what makes a metric successful? And we're not going to talk a lot about PUE, but I just want to share that one of the main reasons why I think PUE was so successful is because it's not just driving sustainability, but it was actually embedded in the business model of the data center operators. The less power you consume for your overhead, for your cooling, the more profitable you become, the less your cost base, the smaller your cost base will be. So I think if you look at metrics, this is one of the ways to look at the opportunities for success. One of the opportunities that we have identified is, and this is just an example, is the e-waste situation at the moment. We had a solution for sustainable removing data center equipment from our customers already for quite some time under the ITAD label, but we recently acquired a company which is named IT Renew. And IT Renew is it's a company which provides global services, predominantly in the hyperscaler corner, where the technology refresh, the speed of which the technology refresh is keeping up is increasing and increasing. So the amount of e-waste which is being generated keeps growing. And IT Renew is a company which is actually capable of taking that e-waste and reutilizing it in a way that no other company has ever done. They're actually building new platforms based out of that legacy equipment. So that's why I strongly believe that this part of the sustainability roadmap within Iron Mountain is going to be very successful, because it actually aligns our sustainability goals, being climate neutral in 2030, with a business model. And as soon as those two align, you'll see there's going to be a lot of traction and a lot of opportunities for success.
True. So Iron Mountain took it one step further, right? Instead of partnering with an IT recycling company, you actually acquired one and made it part of your...
Yeah, we're making it part of our ecosystem, and we strongly believe that in order to create the optimum in the IT delivery chain, this is where the future is going. So we're, as a delivery chain, we're going to be working closely with our suppliers, like Schneider, with our customers, but also with third parties providing us with additional services, which as a whole, as a full IT delivery chain, is going to enable us to reduce the carbon footprint of the IT solutions.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you very much. And obviously that leads to a next question, which is very close to my heart, which is the other part that we can recycle, which is the electricity that can be reused for energy for district heating systems. And I believe that also there Iron Mountain is taking a lead.
Yeah, we got several projects around the globe. One of the projects which is close to heart is the project near our Haarlem facility, where we just signed a letter of intent to actually supply the waste heat network, which is still to be built, with our residual heat. It's basically common sense. It's weird that it didn't happen before and it didn't happen on a larger scale. I think the challenge is not necessarily with the data centers providing the waste heat. I think the challenge is with finding the operators and the companies who are willing to build, and maybe also finding the right incentives for these companies to make the large investments which are usually required with building and operating such a heat distribution network. As an example, for the distribution network that we're now talking about, it will support around 900 companies on the business park. But the payback time for the company who steps in is anywhere from 28 till 32 years. And I think there's work to be done on that area. So it will be successful, it will happen. But there's definitely a need for some financial incentives, probably driven by the government, to make this happen on a larger scale and quicker and faster than is happening today.
Yeah. So talking about measurements, right? Is this a data center delivering waste heat? Obviously affects probably your PUE, which will slightly go down because the cold is being returned out of the district heating system. But do you also believe there is another effectiveness tool or utilization factor necessary to accelerate the use of residual heat in district heating systems? Would a legislation or another measurement tool be helpful to accelerate this process?
I think that's it's a little bit of a difficult question. So I'm thinking on how best to answer this. But I always think, like my previous answer, money talks, right? So financial drivers will help. I definitely believe in self-regulation. So if we don't do anything, it's just waiting before there's legislation going to push us in that direction. So I think thinking about it, being creative, reaching out to the different authorities. I've been in a meeting with some of the authorities last week where we've been discussing on the lack of financial incentives to build heat waste networks on business parks. There's a lot of financial incentives to develop waste heat networks for residential areas, but there's a very limited amount of incentives for business parks.
Okay.
So those are drivers which would definitely help accelerate this. Yeah.
Any comment?
Yeah, I would agree. Financial incentives would be the fastest accelerant for it. The second one being transparency, I think, getting to your point. And there is a metric for that. It's energy reuse factor, which is one of those ISO, old green grid, now ISO, IEC standards, which do exist, that would show the energy you are able to export from your data center. So,
And in your view, is that already used by many data centers?
it exists.
Aha.
So how many report on it? You know, probably very few at this point, because I think the opportunities to do energy reuse have been few. And you know, I got to say, I think I've had more conversations about energy reuse in the you know, from last night to today here than I did probably in the last year.
Okay.
So it's great.
Okay. Another example is obviously also at the front end of the data center, right? The use of sustainable energy, and there's also a lot of things happening. Obviously, certainly on hourly matching, which is also an interesting way to improve the effectiveness or to reduce the carbon footprint of the data center as a system. Anything happening there in your area?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a little bit of a difficult one, and for those of you who are not familiar with 24/7 hourly matching, I think most of the data center operators these days are using power coming from sustainable resources. However, as an example, if you're using water from Norway, or wind from the North Sea, or solar panel energy, we usually buy an amount of kW hours, and we look at the end of the year, how much did we consume and how much did we procure. And if we stay under the threshold, we said, okay, we've used only energy coming from sustainable resources. And there's a little bit of self-reflection there as well. This goes for Iron Mountain as well. However, if you look, for instance, at the fact that those solar panels are not generating any energy in the middle of the night, so you're pulling your power from the grid. So effectively, you're not using green power, you're using gray power, or maybe even brown power. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do, our end goal is to match the hourly consumption of our customers and of the data centers with the hourly production of sustainable energy. And that's obviously that's a complicated story. We need the energy providers to join in. We're also looking actively on signing PPA agreements, which gives us a little bit more flexibility on that end. And then the next complicated part is the reporting part, because you also need to make sure that your hourly reporting is in order. Yeah. But it's definitely a way forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, given the fact that we have about 10 minutes left, any questions from the audience to these two gentlemen? Oh, okay, let me grab a microphone.
Hi, question to you both. Which sustainability ranking would you most like to be on top of? Are there any yet? Are you looking at them daily, weekly?
I definitely think that we want to be the most sustainable data center in the world. If that's an answer to your question. Is there a list of sustainable data? There is a couple. Sorry, there are a couple of lists. Although I would argue that the criteria used there are you can argue about. Yes.
Yep. Schneider Electric were the Global Knights, anyways. It was one of the rankings, and last year we were first and second. But it's obviously from as a manufacturer, we want to be green in our operations, but we're a lot of our effort right now is in ensuring that the folks that we supply to has all the information that you need to also be sustainable. So I would say right now, from a focus perspective, and you heard this in the last session you were here, is getting accurate Scope 3 carbon data so that you know what you're getting when you buy it.
Yeah. So, I mean, a list, there obviously are lists about PUE of the different data centers. Actually, the Netherlands is pretty high on the list, or low, whatever, but we're doing a great job there. So are you looking for different lists or different metrics?
Oh.
When things become important, then you get lists, like, for example, clusters.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, when things get reported, they get listed, and then you're measured on it. I guess today the only list which exists, which is also measured by some international companies, are PUEs on average per country. And it's interesting because then the Netherlands actually do a pretty good job compared to other countries, which probably has to do with the fact that it's kind of legislated in the Netherlands, right? There's a question from a gentleman behind you.
Sorry, I have a question for Robert. Robert, you mentioned the land development and biodiversity becoming an issue somewhere down the line. How long do you think that's going to take? Where do you see that coming?
Yeah, so so as we were working on these metrics, actually, this is one of the Schneider corporate sustainability folks that that looks across all industries on this. And the metric was actually under development in France, and the one that we chose is called mean species abundance. So if you're building a data center in a property, what effect do you have on the biodiversity there, and what things can you do to help not degrade it or improve it, by looking at the trees and the animals and stuff that are there. So that's one. So I think companies will start looking at, hey, can I go to a brownfield site instead of a greenfield site? What are the economics and the impacts on the land there? So to be honest, I think that's that area is accelerating. And for again, that data center industry, it's not like mining, right? We're not, we're not as mining or farming, big deal for land and biodiversity. Data centers less so, but I'd give it another year or two, and there'll probably be a couple of reasonable metrics there that we'll be able to use to see how we're doing.
Hi, Alex Piketty from Iceland, originally not from there. The reason for my question is, it's interesting, it's good to hear the focus on sustainability and the progress that's being made. The corporate focus and commitment to it is deep, and it's obviously broad across the world. Living in Iceland and representing a data center operator that actually uses sustainable energy, what I find remarkable is the discussions that I've listened to since I've been here. It sounds like I'm at a Greenpeace conference. I've never heard so many activist environmentalists that happen to be doing the same things that we've been doing in the data center sector for quite some time. So the funny thing is, and this is just more of kind of a public reflection and then a question. The reflection is, how do you differentiate if you're actually sustainable when everybody is saying that they're sustainable? So I can say the exact carbon emissions, and that goes down to metrics. So if we've got a metric, what the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions are those the metrics that we need to report at on a customer level, your emissions, scope 1, 2, 3 in our data center for your workload based on source of electricity? Because right now, I think the general public who isn't in the sector is exceedingly confused because everyone is already sustainable, even if they're running in Virginia. So now, how do we actually become sustainable and have architecture discussions about the placement of workloads and adapting infrastructure to actual carbon usage not marketing departments explaining to people that they're sustainable?
It's an interesting question. It's a good question as well, and I understand why you ask it, given your background. I think it's fair to say, if you look at that, where data centers traditionally have risen is where the customers had the demand. So that's why we're here. That's why we're here today. I do strongly believe that from a sustainability point of view, the steps that are being made are true ones, and I also believe that. Around the whole industry, there's a vibe of greenwashing as well. So I understand that it's difficult for people to understand, okay, what's true and what's fiction. Luckily, we have events like these where we try to share our thoughts and explain our solutions to a large crowd. But to provide you a more in-depth answer, and maybe Erik, this is also something where you can chime in, because I think as a data center industry, organized under the DDA in the Netherlands, we try to explain what we're doing as well. I think we're doing a better and better job year after year. But is there room for improvement? Probably yes. And the steps where Rob is referring to, like the metric list, is definitely a good step as well. Which metrics are actually going to be adapted, and which metrics are going to bring the success that we're looking for? It's like a secondary discussion. But it's not a 100% clear answer to your question. But
it's a hard question, I guess.
Yeah.
Does the market recognize the validity of, if I pay a green tariff, does that make you sustainable? Right now, the answer is that's okay with the buying public.
Yeah.
When will regulation reach the point of actually relying not on a purchasing decision and actual utilization of resources? Is that on the horizon, or is that just hopeful thinking for somebody up in Iceland?
So I mean, looking at what's happening within different regulation organizations, I think things will probably happen, and that's why hopefully we'll get ahead of it, so that nothing is a surprise. But I do get it, because if you look at energy use, there's all sorts of levels. You know, how is your procurement? PPAs? Are you doing offsets? You know, are you truly 100% renewable through geothermal, right? And all of that needs to be transparent, I think, as people start choosing their operators. And then if you're already carbon-free on your energy purchase, then what's your next whack-a-mole you got to hit? Well, it's going to be scope 3. So now you're going to have to start beating up your vendors to make sure everything that starts getting reduced over time. And so, yeah, again, visibility is going to be, I think, half the battle. But digging into the carbon stuff is important.
And one of the things I may add to that is that what we have done, we delivered something which we call the Green Power Pass, which provides our customers with the benefits from the sustainable energy that we're procuring. So that actually shows a true benefit in being a customer in a sustainable data center. So those are steps which we're undertaking to be more transparent on where that sustainability actually is.
And question for you. I flew Iceland Air here. Did that help at all with my carbon footprint, or was that geothermal? No? Yeah.
You fly on solar power. Okay. Well, that's any other questions? Because we have 1 minute left, and then we have to... Sure, absolutely.
Are either of your organisations looking at energy storage, just going back to the whole power purchase agreements and so on, so you can then use your sustainable energy sources at night or when the wind's not blowing?
Yes, and to achieve, again, the advanced type of thing that Iron Mountain, I apologize, is trying to do with 24 hour-by-hour matching of consumption. You have to start looking at some storage technologies, and there's a lot of great stuff happening, I think, there. Just making sure it gets cost-effective.
Yeah, energy trading might be an interesting one there to make it an economic model for data centers. But there are some problems in the grid at this moment in the Netherlands. So charging a battery with a couple of megawatts while running your data center in the meantime over the same grid will probably lead to extra congestion in the current distribution system. So it's a good idea, and it's been talked by many data centers to see if there's a business model possible. Okay, that's it. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would like to thank my my two panel guests, and obviously there is a present.
Yeah, thank you.
Bedankt.